Hey everybody, it's the 3D Printing Professor, and we've kind of come to the end of the 3D Printing 101 course, but don't worry, there will be more coming in the future. However, it's time that we take a look, get some hands-on experience with the various slicers that you're going to get an opportunity to use. This video is going to be broken up into 4 parts. Each video is going to deal with one of the top slicers that you're likely to run into and use. Now, I recommend you use whichever slicer your 3D printer manufacturer tells you to use. If they ship their own slicer or if they have one of their own, then you should use that one. But if not, you can pick, and here's a couple of the choices. Now, to save you from having to watch through a slicer that you're not going to use, I'm going to make one video per slicer. Let's go hit the slicers and get some hands-on experience and see if we can slice a very tricky model so that you can learn the settings that you need. So in this video, we are going to be taking a look at Cura, but not the latest version of Cura. This version of Cura, 15.04.6, is the last version of Cura to come out before Cura2 came out, which was motivated by the Ultimaker 3. Cura is created by the Ultimaker Corporation, but they've done a great job of keeping it as an open slicer that anybody can use, and consequently, this slicer got shipped with a lot of 3D printers. Now, I've got Cura set up right now to work with my Monoprice Select Mini, but the first thing you're going to have to do when you load up Cura is you're going to have to set it up for your printer. So let's first talk about how we run Cura. Cura can be installed, so if you're using Windows, it will have an icon on your desktop if you've told it to, or you can go to your Start menu, find the Cura program, and simply click on it, and then it will open. So now that it's open, we need to set it up for a printer. So you go to File, Machine Settings, you tell it to add a new machine. Oh, it closed down Cura to pull up the wizard. You hit next. You tell it which kind of printer that you have, and if it isn't on the list, you can hit other, and it'll set it up for you. The main things that you need to set up are the size of your build area, how many extruders you have, whether you have a heated bed, and your G-code flavor, and whether your Z height drops down or gets lifted up. And that depends on what type of printer that you have. So mostly your printer manufacturer will tell you how to set up the slicer, so just follow the instructions that they give you. So I've got this all ready to go, and you can set it up for multiple printers, which is super cool. Now, as it's set up right now, Cura is set up in a very simple print mode, and this is okay a lot of the time, most of the time, but I'm going to do a print today specifically that won't work with these settings. And the print that I'm going to be doing is a tornado model originally created by Margin Elsenman, modified by Alessandro Ranicciulli. I think that's how it's pronounced, and I apologize if I butchered your names, but I gave it a shot. And this tornado model is well, I'm doing a tornado model because I live in Hurricane now, and hurricanes are hurricanes and tornadoes. You know, it makes sense in my head. But this is also a really cool model in that it doesn't really need supports. Despite the fact that it's smaller at the bottom and bigger at the top, it takes advantage of those slight overhangs. So, to load the model into Cura, you either need to go to File, Load Model File, and go to where the model file is, which it should be right here, Print Projects, there it is, Golovend. Or, one way that I like to do it is I just like to go to the directory where I've got the file, and then click and drag the STL file onto Cura. And there it is, the model's loaded in. Now you might notice something already, that it's a little bit big for my build space. So, fortunately, Cura gives us the ability to manipulate files a little bit. So I'm going to just click on the file. I'm going to click these. Down here we can rotate, scale, or mirror. And also if you click and drag on it, you can move it around in the build area. I'm going to click scale. Now, scale in Cura goes from 0 to 1. 0 being no scale, 1 being full size, and any decimal number in between describing the size of it. So if you want it to be about half size, you'd put in 0.5. Okay, now Cura's got a cute little button right here that says to max, and if you click it, it will automatically size the print to fit in your build area. Now the print fits in my build area, and you can see that it's slicing it here in the corner with this little status bar. But while it's playing with it, I'm going to also mention that Cura has these little handlebars here that you can click and drag to resize it. But notice that if I click and drag any one of them, they all get resized. I'm going to put it back to max. That's because uniform scale is locked. So I can unlock that, just like the little lock button. And now if I scale it, whoop, no, it's still doing it by all of them. Well, let me see. I can make this 0.2. And there we go. It's still just as wide, but now it's not as tall. And so non-uniform scaling can come into use in certain situations. But I'm going to go back. I'm going to turn back on uniform scaling. Set it to max. Oh, wow. I've done messed it up. I need to put this back. Okay, unlock uniform scaling. Everybody to 0.5, because 0.5 is a nice even number. There we go. I like that. That makes me happy. Click on model, scale it. Yeah, relock the uniform scale so I don't have to deal with that. Now it's slicing the model. And over here on the right, we have the view mode. Now the view mode allows us to take a look at our model in a couple of different ways. Mostly you're going to be using normal, but you can also look at it in overhang mode. Now overhang mode colors the parts of the print that have to deal with overhang that might fail. And in this case, the only place is at the very bottom of the print, which is on the print bed, which is where you want all of your overhang problems to be, because that means that it has something to print on. In this case, this model is great, but if there were other places that I were worried about, I might need to turn on to print support structure. In this case, I don't need to worry about that. There's also a transparent mode, which allows you to see the front and the back of the model at the same time. This mode just hurts my head. There's an X-ray and there's an X-ray mode, which is similar. What it does is it colors the places where you have 2 or 3 layers of things that you're looking at. This way you can see objects that are behind other objects. If your build plate is getting messy and you're trying to line things up, this mode might help. Quite frankly, I think it's just in there for fun. And then there's the layer view. Now this view is very important, and I recommend every print that you do, you look at in layer mode before you print it, because this gives you the view more or less of what your print is going to look like. It's still loading that toolpath. There we go. Now we can see it's got the top layer on there, it's got a bottom layer, and if I scroll on down here, we can see the infill pattern. However, this isn't what I want. I want this to print in vase mode, which is to say I want it to be open at the top and have a hollow interior. Now, the other thing is, notice way down here on this first layer, how it's got these circles around the outside. That's because I've got brim on. Now, I talked a little bit about the brim and the outline and things like that, and I've got my brim settings way messed up. I've got a lot of brims on here. This particular setup is really good if you're getting curling problems, because it creates a nice stable base for your print and it will come up. But by default, it's usually just got one circle that it's going around. However, I don't even do that. I change my start G code so that it just draws a line and primes the nozzle all by itself. But nevertheless, yeah, what I'm saying is we've got some settings that we need to address and we need to look at. So we can't do it in this current view. There's not enough settings. We need more settings. So I'm going to go to, now again, this mode will probably work for most things, but not for this case. So I got to change it. So we're going to go to Expert and switch to full settings. And do I want to copy the setting from my quick print? Sure. And here is the full settings. Now notice this sidebar is no longer big enough. We need it to be bigger. And meanwhile, it's working on the print piece by piece. So let's take a look at what we got going on here. 1 shell thickness, 0.15 layer height, 1 shell thickness, top and bottom fill, 10% fill density. Wow, that's terrible. And the brim. Notice now I've got a little ... button next to my brim. I can click it and I can tell it how many brims I want. I can also turn on supports here, and I can even pull up some information about the supports. How do I want it to do the supports? Really cool stuff in here. However, I don't need any of these, and in fact, I'm going to just turn off the brim in this case. I don't even need that. My filament diameter is not 2 point. Boy, I'm glad I'm here. It's 1.75. Wonder what happened to that. That's weird. My nozzle size is 0.4. Now, these advanced settings have done a good job of organizing things in the basic settings that you're going to use most often, the advanced settings that you're sometimes going to mess with, but probably not very often, plugins that you can do to do cool things like pausing at a certain height, which is super cool. And then you can actually modify your start and end G code from here, which is, we talked about this in the slicer information. You can change the way it starts and ends a print. Now, I recommend that if you change this, you're probably only going to change it once and you're never going to touch it again. And that's fine. That's the way it should be. But we're going to stay in the basic settings. And what I want to do is, I like the layer height, but I want more shells in here. I want the walls to be thicker. I'm going to crank that up actually to 4 shells. I want a nice thick vase. I want this thing to be solid. The top and bottom thickness is good. Now notice that it does it in an absolute measurement. So 0.6 millimeter bottom thickness with 15 millimeter layer heights means that I'm going to have about 4 layers on the bottom. Notice how thick those walls are. Ah, glorious. But I'm actually going to change this. I want a 2 millimeter bottom thickness. I want the bottom to be nice and thick, but I don't want the top. I want no top on here. So how do I fix that? Real simple. See the dot, dot, dot here under fill density? I'm going to click that, and I'm going to tell it no solid top fill. And also while I'm in here, I'm going to say no infill, 0% infill. And if I do this, and if I allow this to finish its processing, so we got to wait for this slider to go all the way over, then we will see something cool. So I'm just going to clip the video here, wait for it to finish loading its path, and get back to you in just a second. No, it said 0% infill. Okay, so I just realized I made a mistake. It finished the whole process and it was still doing infill, and I realized I did this infill overlap, which is supposed to be 10. That allows the infill to kind of press against the wall a little bit. So leave that one alone and change the infill density right here to 0. I was wondering why it was taking so long. It was taking forever to process the code. I'm like, you don't have any top layers or infill. What's your problem? It had infill. So this is where you change the fill density to 0. And you want it to be a 0% fill density, 2 millimeter thick walls. And it's just going to come on up here. See how this is working. And now it's loaded. So let's just go through. And you can see now we get travel lines on the top layer. So we know, why is it traveling so much? It shouldn't need to do that, but that's all right. And as I come to the bottom, I can see, as we get to the bottom, it starts drawing. Look at that nice thick bottom there. Now, I'm still getting the skirt on here. And I'm not sure I want the skirt. Why am I getting the skirt? Well, I said no adhesion type. I click here and it's got the skirt. And so I can turn this down and I can say 0 lines on the skirt. I'm actually going to leave it. It doesn't offend me that much. And here we go. I might want to decrease the number of walls. I may do that for the other ones because that seems really thick. But this is going to be a nice solid vase. And it was created, again, from a model with a solid top on it. Just by manipulating the settings, we took this print from having a solid top to being a hollow vase that we can use. And so there we go. There's the hurricane vase, all sliced up, ready to go. Now we need to take those instructions that it came up with to draw this 3D model and save them, which you just, big save icon in the corner, easy to find. Click that, save it. I have a place that I like to save things. It's called SD Staging. It's a directory where I can save all of my G code, and then all I have to do is take that G code and process it. Now, I normally like to name my files with a little bit of a code. This is the tornado vase because I didn't like the original name. And then I hit dash and I say, okay, I've got this set up for PLA. So I make a little note here that it's for PLA, and I make a note that I've done it in vase mode. This is just a code for me later so that I know what settings I use to prepare this file. Then I can hit save and we're good to go. But I'm not going to save this because I'm going to have to do this again for other slicers. But there you go. That's how you prepare a model. And all you have to do now is take that G code, send it to your 3D printer, and your 3D print is ready to go. So if you're using Cura, if you're planning on using Cura, I hope that this has helped you. If you have any questions, be sure to ask in the comments below. As with all of my 3D Printing 101 videos, if you need more information, there will be a write-up coming where I will type this all out and get this information to you. As always, thank you very much for watching. Safety first, and I'll see you next time. So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at Cura2, which is the latest version of the Cura slicing software from the Ultimaker Corporation. It's a beautiful piece of software, and it was motivated by the Ultimaker 3 for them to make these changes. And you'll notice that a lot of things have changed from Cura1 if you knew Cura1. For one, the user interface, all the data and information that you normally would get, which would be on this side of Cura1, is now over there. So it necessitated me moving my camera, but not a big deal. We can make do with this. So the first thing that you need to do with any slicer is load up a model, and the model that we are going to be using again is the Tornado model here that was originally created by Margin Elzerman and has been modified by Alessandro Ranciulli, and he modified it with a top and a bottom, and so let's take a look at that model. So to load a model, you either click the open file here, you click file open file here. I've got all of my models organized in a print projects folder here, and then you just double click on the model and click open. Or my personal way of doing it is to go to where the model is located on my directory structure and just click and drag the STL I want to print in here. Now notice that Cura immediately says, whoa, first of all, none of the models fit in the build volume. This model at 100% is too big. And so it auto-scaled the model to 84% of the original size. Now there's a little bug in the current version where even after auto-scaling it says, I still can't print it. But if you click on the model and just kind of wiggle it around a little bit, it'll say, oh wait, no, now it fits. And it's good. And that's one thing. You can click and drag and move the model so you don't have to print everything in the middle. Also, we have options over here to scale it. Notice it's automatically scaled it to 48%. So in Cura2, the scale factor is from 0 to 100%. So if you want something to be half size, it would be 50%. I want this to be 45%. And there we go, because I like nice even numbers. And again, you can turn off uniform scaling. And if you do that and you say, now I want it to be 20% of its height, then notice that while it's still wide, it's 20% of its height. But notice that in doing this, it created these red sections. And this is something that Cura does to warn you that these angles might be printing at too high an angle. Because I squashed it down, the angle of those facets change, and so you might want to turn on support. Now, of course, I'm not going to turn on support. I'll talk about how to do that in a minute, but I'm just going to go back to making this 45% and turn universal scaling back on. Also down here at the bottom we have view mode, so you can view this as a solid print. X-ray mode allows you to see through the model so that you can see what's on the other side. And then also there is layers mode, and layers mode gives you kind of a preview of what the print is going to look like when it's done. And Cura is very fast at bringing this up. So there's the top and sides. As you go on down, you can see the infill for each individual layer, and it gives you a nice shadow for the whole thing. I love Cura's preview. Cura2's preview. It's absolutely beautiful. And there you can see the 10% infill, and then we can go down and we can see the flat layers on the bottom, and everything is perfect. It looks good, except that it's nothing like what I want. Because this model I actually want to print hollow with no top, so it can be like a vase. So for that, we're going to have to edit the settings. Now let's take a look at these settings. Oh, I forgot to mention, the first thing you're going to have to do when you set up Cura is set it up for your printer. But if it doesn't have a printer set up, the first thing it does when it opens up is it says, hey, what printer do you want me to print on? Unfortunately, my MP Select Mini was already on there, and I could tell it the size and everything. And so, yeah, that was all set up. And what material do I want to print? Now, here's another thing about Cura2 that I think is interesting. They've made low quality 0.15 millimeter, which for me has always been like the minimum acceptable quality. 2 millimeter can be done and it prints faster, but 0.15 millimeter layers are just at that crux between looking good and printing not too slowly. So it's interesting to me that that's low quality. Normal quality is 0.1 millimeter, and high quality pushes it less than 100 micron layer height, which is super cool. I'm going to keep it at low quality. I'm okay with that. But down below, now these are your normal settings. Down below are your advanced settings. And down here is where we can turn on our support. We can enable support right here. Again, this model doesn't need it. So if you turn on supports, you're not going to see any difference. It's still going to reslice the model and try to see where it needs supports, but it's not going to find anywhere. Everything on this will print without supports, I think. Yes, no supports necessary for this model. So might as well turn that back off. So I said that I want to have a hollow top and no infill on the inside. Well, no infill on the inside is easy enough. I'll just switch that to 0%. But how do I get rid of the top thickness? Now notice again in Cura2 everything is done in absolute dimension. So if I want 0.8 millimeter on my bottom thickness, that's going to translate to about 7 layers. But I want a nice thick bottom layer, but I want no top layer. And in fact, I want more a 1 millimeter wall, which is interesting because I got a 0.4 millimeter nozzle. If I scroll down into here and scroll in, yeah, it looks like it's doing about 3 shells. So yeah, that's all right. I might want to thicken that up, maybe 1.5 millimeter wall heights. And I can change the bottom to be a nice 2 millimeter thick bottom or a 1.5 millimeter thick bottom. But where do I change the top layer? Well, this is something clever in Cura 2.0. If you hover over each of these headings, you see this little gear icon, and if you click on this, a new menu comes up that allows you to turn on what settings you can see. So you can automatically just turn off everything if you don't want to see it, or turn on everything if you want absolute control. Well, I want to control the top layer, and I'll leave the bottom layer on there too. And now I can independently control these. So my top thickness is 0. And it's giving me a little information. It's normally calculated but has no settings, so I can restore it. And I love that you can just click the little restore button and it puts everything back. And my bottom layer is 1.5 millimeter. So as we go up and down the layers, we'll see that it prints a couple of bottom layers and then comes up to the top, and the top is hollow. So now I've got this set up all the way that I want it to. I can turn on skirts and rafts and all those things that I want. My brim I've got set at 0. I can turn on, but you know, all those settings you can play with. We talked about those individual settings. I've got this the way that I want, so it's now time to take this G-code file, save it, and then take that G-code file and give it to my printer. So I can do that. It's actually down here. There's a click save to file button. Click that button right now, and then it automatically appends with a little MSM to tell me a little information about the way that it was sliced. However, I don't know what MSN means, so all I'm going to do, I'm going to delete this because I want, not that I don't like the original file name, but it's not really descriptive, I think, of what this is. This is our tornado. I hit dash and I put in here that it's sliced for my MP Mini for PLA in vase mode. This is just a little code that I've come up with because I slice for multiple printers and multiple materials and things like that. I've come up with a little code so that I know how I sliced it. And sometimes I'll even put on here 2.5 hour, 3 hour print so that I can have an idea of how long it will take to print. I forgot to say that on my last video. Yeah, that's all right. You don't have to do any of that. This is just a code that I do. I can recommend that to you if you like. But there we go. We hit save, and then you just have to take that G-code file and get it to your printer. Now, I'm not going to save this one because I have to do this again for another slicer after this. But there you go. There's everything you need to know about how to use some advanced settings to do some cool things. And I mean, check it out. We made the shape of this model was not defined by its STL file. It was defined by the way that we manipulated the slicer to do it. That's super cool. So I hope that this has helped you. If this is the slicer that you're going to be using, I hope that this will help you make excellent models. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask them in the comments. Can't wait to hear from you. As with all of the 3D Printing 101 videos, there will be a write-up on my blog with additional information, so go check that out. Thank you very much for watching. Safety first, and I'll see you next time. So in this video, we're going to be analyzing Slic3r here, or you know what, I'm just going to call it Slic3r. Now, to open up Slic3r, you need to, actually, it does not have an installer, so it does not put a icon on your desktop or in your start menu, so you have to just unzip the zip and go to wherever it is and then run it. That's because Slic3r is actually usually running in the background of another app. Usually Repetier Host is the most common place that it's used. It's a background slicer, but still it can be run by its own, and so you might want to try it out, and it's simple to get running because of that. So the first thing you need to do is bring in a file, and you do that by clicking the Add button under the Platter tab here. Click Add, go to where the file is, double click and hit Open, or the way that I like to do it is I go to where that file is. I've got my little print projects directory, and I click and drag the STL file into it. Now you'll notice that this STL file is too big. So first thing we need to do is scale it down across the top. We've got the scale button right here. So click that scale button and enter the percentage. The percentages go from 0 to 100%. So if you want it to be about half the size of the original, you type 50%. You know, I'm not quite sure that's the right size, so I'm going to click it, scale it, and take it to 45. I know that will work. Now, you cannot move it, you can't move it on the build plate. It will always snap back to the middle. Slic3r always prints things in the exact middle of your build plate, which can be a problem if the exact middle of your build plate has been abused beyond use, but that's the way Slic3r works. It has other options, but really scaling's the only thing that you can do. I think you might be able to rotate it. You can rotate it in 45-degree angles or rotate it freely around certain axes. Flip, scale, that's really all that you can do, and I got to that by right mouse clicking. Now, if you go to the 2D view, you can see each of the layers. How do we navigate through here? Never mind. Let's go to the preview. You go to the preview and you can see how it's going to print, and you've got a little slider down the side here to take a look at it. And this is doing a nice little hex infill pattern, and it's going all the way down, and it's got a skirt around the outside. Lovely. Except that this is not the way that we want this to print. We want this to print as a vase, which is to say we want no infill in there. We want nothing on the top, and we want it to be hollow, nice thick walls, in fact. So let's see if I can figure out how to do that in here. So my layer height 0.12, that's too big. I'm going to take it to 0.15. I like that. I'm going to crank it up to 4 or 5 perimeters. I think I'll leave it at 4. And I want 0 top layers. Okay. Then I'm going to go to 0% infill here. And it's slowing my computer down a little bit because it's re-slicing it as I change these. Also, under print settings here, I can change the support material, I can change the raft layers, the speed that it prints at, the brim, and let's scroll on down. Yep, other things, but there we go. I'll go under filament settings here, make sure my filament's correct. Yes, nice extrusion multiplier and diameter. We're good to go. Temperature is looking about right for PLA. And printer settings, of course, I set these all up for my printer before. So let's go back to the preview, and it's already re-sliced it, and it's already redone it, and there it is in vase mode. So very easy to edit those settings and turn it to vase mode. Well, I guess that's done. The only thing that I need to do is export this G-code and get that G-code to my 3D printer. So I will go to Platter, Export G-code, and then I just need to put that in the SD staging directory, which is where I save things. Of course, I'm going to give this a better name. I'm going to call this Tornado. And then I like to put a little code at the end of my G-code files to use up a couple of characters of the name to tell me how it was sliced. Of course, this was sliced for the MP Select. It was sliced in PLA, and it was sliced in vase mode. I might also, if I have it available, I sometimes like to say how long it's going to take to print, but in this case, it's not showing me. Slic3r doesn't give me an estimate of how long. Those estimates are never accurate, but they do give you a ballpark idea of how long after I hit print am I going to have something to work with. In this case, I don't know it, so I'll leave it there. I hit save and we're good to go. Of course, I'm not going to save this because I still have other slicers to do this with, but you can hit save and then get that G-code file to your 3D printer and 3D print it away. So I hope that this has helped you. If this is the slicer that you're going to be using, I hope that this will give you some ideas about it. As with all of the videos in the 3D Printing 101 series, be sure to check out my blog where it will have some in-depth information about this to help you get going on it. And as always, safety first. And I'll see you next time. Hey everybody, it's the 3D Printing Professor, and in this video we are going to be talking about how to slice a model with Simplify3D. And the model that we are going to be slicing, just like in the other ones, is the Tornado model, originally created by Marcin Elserman, edited by Alexandru Raniciuli. His version has a solid top and bottom, so the whole thing is a nice solid manifold shape, the way that it should be. So we're going to take that file and bring it into Simplify3D. So first thing you need to do is click File, go down to Import Models, go to where that model is, which I have it on a directory on my desktop called Print Projects. There it is. It's the Goldvend 3D print model, or the way that I prefer to do it is just to go to where it is in my file system and drag the STL over to the build plate. There you go. Now, there are a couple things about this model that I need to talk about. First of all, it's too big for my build area. Second of all, it's not set up. My Simplify3D is actually set up for my Replicator 1, not for my Monoprice Mini. So I need to set up my Simplify3D for my Monoprice Mini and scale this model down to fit in that space. Now, I'm going to talk about Simplify3D for just 1 second. On the left here, it has a list of the models and a list of processes. And this is really the big strength of Simplify3D, that it breaks up things into processes and that you can use those processes to switch between them and do different models and different processes. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but it's actually not too bad. So I'm actually going to add a process right now. I'm going to add this for my Monoprice Select Mini. Do I want to? Yeah, I don't know what changes I made, so I'm going to say no. So now I've set it for the Monoprice Select Mini. I want to set it for PLA. So I love how you can configure the materials and the printer separately. Medium resolution, that's fine. 0.15 top, bottom layers. Skirt brim is off. Support is off. Fantastic. Now, I should mention, this is normally how Simplify3D will show up. It'll just be this simple interface, and I can call MP PLA, lowercase p for PLA. That's my own little code that I've made up to keep things simple. This is how it normally looks. You can click Show Advanced and it will show you all of these additional settings. We'll be diving into those settings in just a second, so I'm going to hide the advanced for just 1 second. And you can choose which models get these settings attached to them with the Select Models button, but most of the time it's one setting for all of them unless you start to get advanced. And we're not getting advanced today. Well, we're getting a little bit advanced. Okay, now the model is, now the build space is set up for the Monoprice Select. And I have to hold down Control and click and drag in order to move things around, or I can click this button on the right. So these buttons that are right above my head right here, I can click and now I'm in drag it around mode, and click this one and now I'm in scale it up mode, up or down mode, and I can click this one and now I'm in rotate mode. So there's lots of hard to click rotate mode. There we go. Ooh, look at that tornado go. And there's lots of options here. Or you can double click the model and this really cool menu comes up. And I may have to move my head. No, we're good. I can just zero out the rotation right here. So this menu right here gives us some fine-tuned numeric control for how we're going to put these things in. Reset the position. I can go over here to where is it? Edit, center and arrange models, and it will put it in place for me. That's good. My scale is set at 50. I'm going to set it to 45% just to make sure it fits in and give me a nice even number to work with. Ah, that's nice. I can change the model from this menu, and I really like using this double click menu to edit the model right there. And now that it's ready to go, all I have to do is click prepare to print, and I can choose multiple processes, but I'm only doing the one. I'm doing the monoprice select PLA print. So I click that, and really quickly Simplify3D slices up that model, and man, that looks good. And we can go through the layers, and it's a good looking print. Now, I will say, however, that this is not the way that I wanted this to print, because I want this to print like a vase, which is to say I want it to have no top, hollow in the middle, and have nice thick walls. And we can do that without editing the model, just by editing our settings. So let's exit out of that and go back into our MP Select P process, and I'm going to rename this vase so that I remember that I edited this for vase. 0% infill, that's the first thing we need to do. And I'm going to just show the advanced settings here, because I also need to increase the outline perimeters. I'm going to maybe crank that up to 4 outlines, and then 0 top layers, and I'm going to increase the bottom layers to let's see, at 0.15. I'm probably going to crank it up to 8 layers. Give me a nice solid bottom to this. I want this to be a nice solid vase. I want to be able to put stuff in it and feel like it's not going to break or deform. And there we go. It sets it all up. Now I've got it showing me the feature types, and this green section right here is for the top layers, and you might have seen that if you watched the other videos and I didn't explain it. Those are the layers that they put in anticipation of hitting the top. I think that's what the top solid layers. Yeah. Now I could turn those off. I don't technically need those, but you know, they're there and they're not hurting nothing. If I switch this to show it just by movement speed, which is another way that I like doing it, like slowing down for those. How about just active tool head? I could maybe try and figure out how to get rid of those. I do like feature type because you have no question about what you're printing. You could just take a look here. Oh, that's not solid. That's fill gap. Huh. Interesting. Fill gap. Okay. And so just scrolling on up and down, we can see the model. And another feature that I like that you'll see on a lot of Angus's videos is you could hit play and have it automatically fill it up as you're going around. Makes for great videos, and I need to take advantage of that option a lot more. So there is our vase printing. So that's excellent. It's exactly the way that I want. I love that Simplify3D kind of makes you go through this preview step before you do it, so that you always have a second to go, oh, wait a second, is that going to work? Is everything going to be fine? And then you just click this big honkin' Save Toolpaths to Disk button. Now, I got to rename this file right here because it's just a terrible name. It should be called Tornado. And then I'm going to add a little code at the end of it. And this is something that I do. You don't have to do this, but I do MP select, or because this is my MP select, I do a small case P for PLA. I have a different code for every material that I use. A for ABS, P for PLA, PET for PET. What else have I used? Just if I come up with a material, I just make a small 3-letter code for it, 1 or 3-letter code. And then this is giving me an estimated build time of 4 hours and 27 minutes. So I'll just put 5 hours on there just to tell myself, got to block out 5 hours to print this model right here. Click save. That model is going to be saved to the disk, and then all I got to do is get that G-code to my 3D printer, and I'm good to go. And there you go. We've now used Simplify3D, and the best part about Simplify3D is it doesn't save these settings in anything more than this process. So if I decide to just wipe out this process, or I'll just delete it right there, then all of my settings are now saved for, or we'll go back to that later. So there we go. Now I've got it back set up on the on the replicator. And I love that Simplify3D makes it easy to switch between machines, really. You know what? No more gushing about Simplify3D. I love it. You don't have to. It does cost $150, and that is somewhat of a deterrent for people, so that's okay. Listen, I thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, be sure to ask them in the comments. If I can help you with anything, I'll let you know. And as with all of these 3D Printing 101 videos, there will be a write-up on my blog, so be sure to check that out for additional information. As always, thank you very much for watching. Safety first, and I'll see you next time. No, I don't have a tie on. Blast it. That's all right. Nobody